It's time for the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. Yesterday, the big statue of Robert E. Lee taken down. And if you've ever been to Richmond and seen how massive this structure was, this monument to treason was, it's a good thing to see it go. And I remember a couple years ago, we went down to Richmond for the Fight for 15 convention, and they had the backdrop at that park. And I remember at the time going, really? Is this the place that you want to have? Because it's the center of the community. It's where everything goes. So naturally, this is the place where you have the space that you have, but to have that as the backdrop, I just remember going, wow, something serious and wrong. Now, this is years ago. It's been dismantled, it's taken away, and good. It's about time that this monstrosity is gone. What's interesting to me, and this is the problem I have in all of this, is remember, the Republican Party tells us that they're the party of Lincoln, the person who freed the slaves. Correct. Yet, the party of Lincoln loves Robert E. Lee. And I'm struggling with how you balance this. Now, understand, this is how Republican mind works on every issue. Hang around long enough, they're going to be on all sides of it, front, back, forward, top, you name it. They're going to be on every side of every issue. Depends on the day. Depends on which way the wind blows or who's paying the salary. But this is one of those, you go, hold on, I'm a little confused with the whole, yes, we're the party that ended slavery. We're the party of Abe Lincoln, honest Abe. But we're also the party of the treasonous traitors who wanted to inculcate the institution of slavery forever. And then, to top this off, to really heighten the ignorance, you have the former guy, Donald Trump, who came out with his little spiel about some weird kind of nonsense about how Abe Lincoln was in negotiations to bring Robert E. Lee to the North to fight because he was a strategic general and he was really bright and never lost a war except for Gettysburg. I'm really having a tough time with that. But sadly, this is who the Republican Party has turned into. There really aren't much in the way of beliefs. It's purely about, whatever off the cuff. I got to win this argument, so I'm going to make stuff up. It's crazy. Just crazy. Now, today, the big news, Joe Biden came out and gave his spiel. Understand, we've had a good number of people in this country vaccinated. They're saying at least about 3/4 of the population has had at least one of the vaccine. So what we're really talking about in this country is how do we get the 25% of us? How do we get the people who used to wear the tinfoil hats, the conspiracy? How do we get those folks to go, yeah, we should protect ourselves? How do we get to that? Because according to the CDC, about 177 million people have been fully vaccinated. More than 75% have at least the one shot. Understand, we've had over 650,000 people die of COVID, and right now we're in a span, which is the 7-day average, puts us as high as it's been since March, with 1,500 people dying each and every day. So the president had to come out today and had to say something. Had to come up with the plan. He's got a 6-point plan. That 6-point plan, pretty simple. You need something aggressive. You need something that's going to move us in a direction. Ensure that we're fighting this. Look, got to get the vaccine. Got to get the vaccine to people. Got to vaccinate the unvaccinated. That seems pretty simple. Number one, we got to protect the vaccinated. People who have done the right thing, we got to make sure that they're protected. There are ways of doing that. We've got to keep schools open, doing the social distancing, doing the things that we need to do to make sure that kids are safe. Absolutely, that's part of it. But we need to do what works. And as Biden pointed out, we got to do testing, we got to do the masks, the tracing, the stuff that we know that we knew from the beginning has worked. If only we did it. Got to do that, and then we got to be proactive, and we got to protect our economy from collapsing, and we got to push for recovery. Sane, smart, things moving forward. We also need to improve our healthcare system for the people who have it. This seems pretty simple to me. There was nothing here major in my view. He said, look, we need to get people vaccinated. The vaccines are free. Everyone can get them. 16 and older, you can get them since April, since I guess it was May if you were 12 and older. We can get them. But yet there are, as he pointed out, some 80 million people, I guess, that haven't gotten anything, nothing. And they're the ones who are, holding back. So now what the president has done, he signed an executive order that says, look, if you want to do work for the federal government, you're going to have to vaccinate your employees. You're going to have, this is where I've been saying from the beginning, capitalism will eventually win. And it's going to be interesting to watch the people who were, pro-capitalism, complain when capitalism does what it does and protect itself. But Biden said, look, if you want to do business with us, this is one of the parameters. Now, they, I guess, have limited, exemptions for if you have a health condition, which your doctor should deal with, or this religious nonsense. And I'm calling bull on the religious nonsense. I'm tired of that. There's nowhere in the Bible, and I've read it. There's nowhere in the Bible that says thou shalt not get vaccine. Sorry. Now Biden has also said 17 million healthcare workers going to have to get it. Sorry. You want to work in the healthcare facility, you got to go and you got to protect yourself. You got to make sure that you get what you need to protect yourself, but others as well. And look, if anyone takes Medicare or Medicaid, that's going to fall right under their line. OSHA is now coming out with a rule that's going to say, look, all private sector employers with 100 employees, you're going to have to do it too. Or you're going to have a once a week test to make sure that people aren't bringing things in the workplace. Because as I said from the beginning, you have the right not to get it. You do. You just don't have the right to not get it and get me sick and everybody else. And like I said, capitalism's going to figure this out. We've already seen, Tyson Foods, and we've already seen United Airlines. They've got mandates. We've seen some of the other airlines charging higher premiums. There's all kinds of stuff going on that is moving us in that direction. But like I said, we've got to get to a point where you got to do this. It's got to get done. Now, like I said, there's protecting the vaccinated. We've got to help them. There are booster shots coming online. That's a good thing. Help get through it. But on the kid front, I look at the Los Angeles school district, the second largest school district in the country. They're mandating 12 years and older that everyone in the school be vaccinated. The president himself said that, I think he said there's something like 80% of teachers and faculty, they're already vaccinated. And he goes, look, we got to get to the rest of it. And it's my sense, if they don't want to do it, there's the door. You have choice. Because what are we seeing? We're seeing the states that have the lowest vaccination rates. They're the ones who have the highest childhood infection rates. They're the ones who are having, ICU bed shortages. They're the ones who are having lots of problems. And gee, I wonder why that is. It's crazy. It's crazy in the moment that we live in. But like I said, there's an opportunity here to do some of the right things. On the increased testing side, we're going to ramp up production of tests. If there are people who refuse to do it, then we got to test them early, got to test them often, make sure that when they're around everybody else, everyone else is safe. That seems sane. It seems rational. Nobody's holding anybody to the ground. Nobody's jabbing them as they're walking by. At the end of the day, got to hold people accountable. It seems pretty interesting to me. Now, I loved the comments from the extreme right. the people who tell us how much they love capitalism. My favorite, I think, is that Biden's executive order was akin to making murder legal. And I'm going, I'm missing that. But they're arguing that he can't do this. It can't do that. With federal contracts, you can mandate just about anything. You don't have to take a federal contract. That's your choice thing. Remember how much you love choice? Well, this is it. This is your choice. And what's interesting is it's almost bipartisan, because a lot of Republicans are now coming around going, we're not going to get past this, and we're going to get blamed for it. This is what I love about how some of the messaging is turning, because some of the Republican leadership's going, wait a second, we're going to get blamed for this, because it's our kooky people. It's the people that we've allowed the loudest voice in our party. It's the Trump kids. And even Trump himself was saying, go get the vaccine, which is really weird. But you got Jim Justice, the former Democratic governor of West Virginia turned Trump Republican, saying, look, the very same people who are carrying cell phones around in their pockets are the ones who are telling you all these crazy ideas and all these crazy conspiracies about chips and nonsense that they're putting into you. Look, we can't get chips to make a car. What makes you think capitalism is going to allow them to put a chip in your arm and not put it in a car that they could sell? But Jim Justice said, look, it works. You got to get it done. It seems sane, rational, and that's probably why it's not going to happen. But like I said, capitalism will take care of this. Capitalism will figure it out, because the moneyed interests are tired of losing money. The moneyed interests are going to make sure that they're protected, because at some point you're going to have people suing each other. At some point we're going to end up in courts. And when you look at United Airlines, who said, you know what, we're not taking the medical waivers, we're not taking anything, we're not taking the religious exemption, you're just gone. Going to be interesting to see how this plays out in the courts, especially the courts that someone like Trump packed. Because, and this is where I'm in this weird kind of world. I know a lot of people who represent workers all around the country. And some of the stories that I'm hearing are, look, capitalism is going to win. The moneyed interest of keeping their workforce safe, keeping their businesses open, that's going to win. And we need to make sure that we push for that. It's not difficult stuff. But I had a listener, and I wanted to read this because I had a listener send me this writing. I think they found it somewhere online. But it's titled "In the End." It's written by this Lauren B. And it's one of these things, and I'm not overly emotional, but I wanted to read some of it because this is a nurse this is the person who comes in after you're dead, after you've died of COVID. And this is what she wrote. Quote, "On the day you die from COVID, many things will happen. A colleague and I will enter the room to carefully prepare and clean your body. We will shut off all the IV pumps. We'll turn off the ventilator. We'll silence and turn off the monitor that is screaming at us that something is emergently wrong. We'll remove the breathing tube from your throat. We'll pull out the intravenous lines. We'll remove the arterial line that monitored your dangerously low blood pressure. We'll remove the catheter that drained your bladder and measured as your urine output gradually decreased to nil. In the end, they will leave you in the room, and it will be just you and I. The machines will be turned off. The beeping will have stopped. The alarms will be discontinued. The room will be silent for the first time in days. I might have on music. If your family told me what you like to listen to, I've listened to all kinds of music at the end. Classic rock, big band, South American flutes, Chinese ballads, country and western. Today, it was the Beatles. Yesterday, all my troubles seemed so far away. Now it looks as though they're here to stay. Oh, I believe in yesterday. I'll cover your body with a sheet and try to position you so you look as natural as possible. I'll dial the phone number or open the video chat, and your family will pop up. They will see you and they'll begin sobbing uncontrollably. They will tell you that they love you. They'll question their God. They will tell you that they don't know how they will go on without you. They will thank you for being a great partner, a great spouse, great child, great friend, great person. They'll put the dog up to the camera so you can see them one more time. Old grudges will be forgiven or put aside. I will be privy to family secrets and skeletons that no one else knows about. I'll never breathe a whisper. Your secrets are safe with me. I will listen silently as they beg and they weep and they plead and grieve. I will close my eyes tightly at the scream that signifies pain so raw and deep that it stings my numb and burned out heart. I will try to hold back tears that gather in my own eyes as I empathize with the pain your family is feeling. I will fail. I will cry silently too. I will wait patiently until their tears have slowed and they have told me that they are ready. I will hang up the phone or shut off the video. I'll sigh to myself as I start to clean up. The bag that your battered body lies in won't be zipped up yet. I know it sounds crazy, but I don't believe in zipping up the bag until I'm ready to leave the room. I can't bring myself to clean your room while you lie there inside a dark, zipped-up bag, ignored because you no longer breathe. So I'll take down the drips. It'll take me a while. You'll have been on a lot of drips, sedation, pain medication, fluid, pressors, anti-anxiety medications, a blood thinner. I'll take them all down and puddle the lines on the floor while I dispose of the excess contents. I'll gather up unopened supplies in the room and begin throwing them in the trash. The new cardiac electrodes that don't need to be placed on a chest that no longer has a beating heart. The pulse oximeter that would read 0 if it were attached. The oral care kit that we use to try and prevent you from getting a secondary infection in your lungs. The bags of dialysate that were used in a valiant attempt to preserve your kidneys. The tubing that was attached to the ventilator to breathe for you. The numerous pictures and cards that your family dropped off at the front desk of the hospital for us to hang in your room for encouragement and support. All will go in the trash. Nothing will be salvaged from a COVID room. I'll tidy up many caps that have found their way onto the floor. Caps from IV flushes, caps from medication, caps from IV tubing, caps from respiratory equipment, caps that were opened and discarded so quickly as we worked feverishly that they long had been since forgotten and relegated to the floor. Finally, I will be done cleaning. I will stroke your hair. I will hold your hand. I will position you so you look comfortable. I will wonder why you didn't get vaccinated. Fear, conspiracy, misinformation, just never got around to it? It doesn't matter now. I'll look into your face one more time. I will zip the bag. I will leave you in the room to be transported to the morgue. You, however, will never leave me. Memories like this are not ever forgotten, because in the end, on the day you die from COVID, it will be just you and I. Sad reality. Right back.
Then workers standing up, and the union gives a voice to win. On the Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1929. That was the day a mistrial was declared in the case of 16 textile mill unionists in North Carolina. The mistrial sparked 5 days of anti-union vigilante violence. Textile mill workers at Gastonia's Lorry Mill had been on strike since April 1st. They demanded higher wages and shorter work hours, union recognition, and an end to the hated stretch-out system. Soon, textile workers at Bessemer City's American Mill walked off the job in solidarity and joined the National Textile Workers Union. Ella Mae Wiggins was one of the strike leaders at American Mill. She was known for her militancy, but also for organizing black workers into the union. As the strike wore on, mill owners evicted dozens of families from company housing. Wiggins helped set up a tent city. On June 7th, sheriff's deputies attacked strikers who marched to Lorry Mill to call out remaining workers. The police arrived at the tent colony later that evening to disarm them, and Gastonia's police chief wound up dead. Immediately, more than 70 textile union members and leaders were rounded up and arrested. 16 stood trial for the murder of Chief Adderholt. The Anti-Union Committee of 100 smashed up the NTWU headquarters in Gastonia and Bessemer City. They kidnapped, beat, and threatened to kill several union members. The rampage continued as scab forces moved onto Charlotte to raid the offices of the International Labor Defense, who had handled the strikers' case. 5 days into the terror, Wiggins was killed on her way to a union solidarity rally. Outrage over her murder forced mill owners to improve conditions and wages. But the fight to organize would continue for years. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at laborhistoryin2.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So Larry Elder, the Republican hopeful in California's recall election, was recently visiting a homeless encampment, and it was cut short because somebody pelted him with eggs, I guess. And while I don't agree with pelting people with eggs, I couldn't help but wonder, and this is maybe just how jaded I've gotten, if Larry Elder was there to see how much space was left. So if in the weird chance that he does become the next governor and they do start throwing people out of their homes because the eviction moratorium goes away, he'll know where they can put them out in the street somewhere. I know that it's horribly morbid, but it's kind of where my mind went. But I'm hoping recent polling, we don't have like Larry Elder. Can you imagine California governor like Larry Elder? What's the crazy thoughts that come out of that guy's head? Anyway, here to share some thoughts on, what's possible in California, because it hasn't gotten as much attention as I think as it should. I've asked Jenny Cohn to come talk with us. Jennifer is an election security advocate, writer, attorney. My person to go to whenever I find someone's hit me with a conspiracy of everything's fixed, it's all fraud, it's all bad. She's my expert that I go to. Jennifer, thanks for taking time for us.
Hi, I'm glad you invited me on to talk about this. Thank you.
So this is a big deal. I mean, Newsom could be the third governor recalled. This is kind of a big deal for the country, not just California, because if you get someone like a Larry Elder as governor, what kind of crazy senator would we end up with if something unfortunately happened to someone like Dianne Feinstein?
Well, exactly. I think he's even said that he would appoint someone. He didn't call them crazy, but that was my interpretation. I don't know the word that he used. I'm very worried because with this, with what's happening in Texas, with the assault on women's right to choose abortion, whether to have an abortion, and this sort of crazy going on around the country. The thought kind of is, well, as long as for people like me who live in California or probably New York is similar, that as long as you stay in a blue state, everything's going to be fine. But the problem is, I don't know that we're safe anywhere because they're coming for everywhere, and they're coming for California. The people who want to turn our country into a theocracy, which is most of the GOP now, and unregulated also. And they're coming for California, and they want to turn it into like a Florida or a Texas. And that is really scary, not just for an adult like myself, but I've also got kids, and what kind of a place are they gonna be able to go to grow up and have it not be crazy town?
What kind of place are you leaving behind for your kids? Right. I mean, but I have to give conservatives credit on a certain level, because they're willing to fight in a place like California where, just several years ago, there was never a chance that they were going to win, statewide elections or take, many House seats. They fight in the places where they don't win, and they do move the ball. And you have to give them credit for having a lot of money and a lot of, leadership vision to train people and to heavily invest in attacking Democratic strongholds.
I mean, yes and no. I think that a lot of them, the ones that have really moved the ball the furthest, are motivated by factors that I'm glad don't necessarily motivate my party. I mean, religious fanaticism is a huge motivator.
Right.
And a lot of these people are religious fanatics. That is what they are. And there's been this sort of alliance between them and the people who want, they call it economic liberty, by which they mean no regulation, so that they can just make money at the expense of the greater social good, and even if it means polluting, destroying the earth and all of that. So those two things, extreme greed. I mean, absolutely there's greed among Democrats too, but it's just not on the same level. Objectively, I really don't think it is. And certainly the religious fanaticism isn't. And so, yeah, they've got a machine that we actually now need to get more motivated in response to this real threat, because I don't think Democrats realize that in addition to sort of the RNC machine, they've got these nonprofits, supposedly they're nonpartisan, like the Leadership Institute, which actually trains people to be, I don't know whether you would even call them grassroots activists at that point, because they're getting training for it, but to train them to go into these, that's what they're doing. They're training people to go to these board meetings, and they trade them, the school board meetings, for example. But it started long before that. I think they've had this since the 60s, maybe it's the 80s, but long time. And they train them on propaganda, communication. They train them how to use social media. They train them how to create websites, and they probably, I don't know. It's really scary. There's
what it is, honestly and truthfully, what it is it's, and you go back and you read the 1971 Powell memo. Out of that came the Heritage Foundation, the American Legislative Exchange Council, all of these think tanks, this whole state policy network that sprung up out of that. And out of each of those has sprung up a bunch of these institutes, like you've pointed out, to train grassroots people to spew their kind of rhetoric. And they find them in colleges, they find them in the young Republicans clubs, and they fund them, they pay them, they give them jobs, and they do it well. And you have to give them credit for having, and look, they do all kinds of
it's not really
stuff.
the right word, but they are effective at what they're doing.
Exactly. So what I'm saying is you have to give them credit on a certain level that they have used a game plan that has worked effectively over and over again. And I remember the little snotty guy, Ralph Reed. I remember seeing an interview with him back in the late 80s, early 90s. And he was asked, how did you guys come up with this organizing model? And he pulled out the SWOC handbook, the Steelworkers Organizing Committee handbook, which was basically just stealing old school labor organizing of, talking to people and doing the things that Democrats never do anymore. And for me, this has been one of my pet peeves forever. Democrats got to get back out in the streets, ball up their little digits, and actually fight the fights that Republicans are doing. You don't see anybody defending the school boards, do you?
No, but the other thing I do want to say, though, they are effective at sort of information warfare. I don't know whether that's something to give them credit for. I'm not sure they do as well as it might appear. I mean, they're good at cheating, I guess, because gerrymandering is largely how they have managed to make progress. That's not really changing people's minds, but they're good at creating, for example, Turning Point USA that's Charlie Kirk's organization. And by the way, all these leaders are in the Council for National Policy. I do believe that is kind of the top of the pyramid, even above ALEC. The leaders of ALEC are in the CNP. But in any event, they took down, I don't know if it was hundreds, but at least 100 fake Facebook accounts that were all traced back to Turning Point USA. So they do things like using bots, they pay teenagers to send out their messages, but that is kind of what Russia does. It's like a troll farm. And, I'm not sure if that is really something to be celebrated. What they do is they create, I think, a plausibility for some election wins that are maybe, wouldn't otherwise be plausible. I mean, they do things like they come up, if you're someone like me who is very concerned that the Democrats are not conducting their due diligence to make sure that there's not literal cheating with the voting machines, for example, they do things like if the polls are in their favor, then they're all about the polls. But if they're not, then suddenly they say they're rigged. And what they do is they create something that is basically creating rigged polls, but they call it unskewed polls or unrigged polls. And it creates a plausibility for their candidate. And so until we really conduct more due diligence and more supervision over this incredibly dangerous political party, the GOP, I'm not prepared to say that a lot of their wins some of them obviously are real, probably most of them and everything, but I'm not prepared to give them credit for winning elections. And I'm very concerned, by the way, about this, about the recall for sort of a few reasons. Number one, just assuming even the election is all in the up and up, I am concerned about it because, if you get Larry Elder in there, even legitimately, we're screwed as California. Number two, the software to the election management system used in 60% of the state was leaked by a MAGA clerk, a Trump supporting clerk in Colorado, because we use the same system in a lot of California. And that is the system that programs the voting machines and compiles the precinct totals for entire counties. So, so the experts are saying, and by the way, I'm not really an election security expert. I study what the election security experts say. And what they say is that this gave bad actors the blueprint to know how to find a way in. And there's apparently always a way in. And so, number one, I'm worried they'll cheat. And then Democrats, won't want to look at it carefully because that would undermine faith in elections, which is what Democrats always do to avoiding due diligence and just making it the GOP doesn't cheat. Or they won't figure out how to do, or actually there's three things. Number one, they cheat to win. Number two, they cheat to create an outcry against Democrats. So they flip votes to make it look like Democrats are cheating. That might even be the easiest, because how many vote flipping ballot touchscreen voting machines would it take to start another insurrection in California? Not many, right? So they could do that fairly easily. Number three, they lose, but they just claim that it's rigged, and they're already so they have kind of a win-win-win no matter which way they turn right now. And that's the third narrative is the one they're kind of putting out there right now. So I noticed at least a few months ago, that Mike Lindell, who's, the guy that did the fake symposium for Stop the Steal, is a complete Trump guy. He and a scammer, My Pillow guy. He started saying that he thinks that Trump really won California, which is absurd, and given the demographics. Right. And then Mike Flynn, who's an incredibly dangerous person, also in the CNP, by the way, Council for National Policy, he chimed in saying, yeah, I think maybe you're onto something there about California. And that to me was like, whoa, they're laying the groundwork. If they lose, they're going to just use that as, to do whatever they'll just use that as a propaganda thing to either have another insurrection or to drive turnout for the next election, or just, take all the wind out of the Democrat sails. And the California Secretary of State really, I think, she needs to step up her game on the official audit, because although California is much better than a lot of parts of the country in terms of election integrity and auditing, its audits still kind of suck because the bar is very, very low. And that is out there. It's sort of an objective. There are legitimate problems with California's official audits. The news that is out there. What I'm worried is so she needs to just improve it. The main thing she needs to do is expand the audit to include ballots that arrive after Election Day, because that'll be a lot of the mail ballots. Right. And those should be audited. It's been a hole that everyone's been talking about, real experts, not, Mike Lindell type of people. And she needs to just plan on doing that. And the experts are saying she should do that. And so far she hasn't. So we don't really have a good defense, no matter which way this goes. If they cheat, we don't have a good audit. If they decide to claim that we cheated, we don't have a good audit to defend against that. And
No, you're right. They've set it up to where they heads they win, tails they win as well. But This is one of those moments where this isn't new. No one should be surprised by this, because Trump's has been setting this argument up since 2015. There's nothing new in this game plan. My problem is we just haven't figured out how to defend it right. Because you got Democrats running around saying 2020 was the most secure election ever in the history of elections, and maybe it was. Nobody's shown me any direct proof that someone flipped votes, but I'm still a little going, who knows? I don't want
down ballot. Well, down ballot, there were 27 House races that were supposed to be toss-ups, and they all went Republican. Now, yes, it's possible, that's completely legitimate, but for God's sakes, we should be auditing all these races. And I don't know for how many years election security experts have been saying this, that you need to have reliable paper trails, number one. And then number two, you need to actually use them. Just having paper, it might have a deterrent effect. All right, that is possible. But unless you really, these people study elections, they know which places look and which places don't. And we don't have a system where, even when, as is often the case, there's this massive shift between the polling and the result. It's almost always, by the way, almost always to the right, meaning it's a red shift. My friend Jonathan Simon coined that phrase. We don't have a system that lets us check when that happens. We only do manual recounts, if at all, as a matter of sort of an automatic thing, if the result is like 0.5% between the two. So which is pretty rare. And also, if somebody were to be changing results, they could change more to avoid that automatic recount. And then it puts it all on a candidate to seek it, to go to court and fight it out. And it's really expensive and it's really protracted. And and then the Republicans called him a sore loser, like they did with Al Gore. That was like the one time the Democrats did kind of fight back, and they made banners that said sore loserman. And so we need these automatic regular audits. And I don't know what it would take for the Democrats to wake up, but we always need them.
So let me ask you this then, because I have my Trump supporting friends who always say, well, they're all rigged. Do you have any confidence in our electoral system at all?
I don't know I don't think of it exactly that way. I don't know how to say that. I mean, I guess a little, sure. I'm a little. I don't believe in blind faith for elections. And that started largely when I found out that Comey and Jay Johnson and Jim Clapper, the Obama administration basically spread falsehoods about election security on sort of a core issue. Their big thing was that we didn't have to worry about Russia because voting systems don't connect to the internet. And they had brought out this parade of witnesses who testified under oath, and they were wrong. And and that's pretty much been established. It's not disputed that they were wrong. It's not all voting systems, but ES&S ballot scanners, which they had started installing around 2015, they put wireless modems in them that connect to the internet. And those people they don't dispute they got it wrong. Nobody has asked them about it. Yeah. So we don't really know where they got their misinformation. And so I'm not going to believe what our official government party line is. And in some ways, they're giving us no reason to believe them. The FBI official policy is not to tell the public of breach. They leave it to the discretion of the private vendor, which you can imagine not every private vendor is going to want to come out and say if their system, was breached. And they leave it to the discretion, sometimes I guess to the county or whatever that was breached. And maybe now they've expanded it to the state. They didn't even used to tell the state about breaches.
Yeah, this is where I go back to the reality of we got to go back to paper ballots, hand-marked paper ballots,
and regular audits.
You got to have something that you can count. I want something that that the mark is on there. We can count it. You can count it again and again, because clearly these machines we've got so much technology. We've complicated things to the point to where, on all sides there are questions.
And the other thing I do want to say, though, is it's not just paper ballots. Now you have to say really either add the hand marked prefix or say pen and paper instead, because now the vendors came out, especially ES&S came out with touchscreen voting machines that mark your ballot for you. Right. And studies show nobody looks at it. And maybe just more obviously, they can really break down, and that can absolutely switch elections. Smartmatic, which is, by the way, only in Los Angeles County. So when Trump tried to say that they stole the election for him, that was a lie. However, their touchscreen voting machines had one of the most epic breakdowns ever in 2019. I think it was in 2019. I think that's when their primary was, but maybe it was early 2020. But it was not pandemic related. Everything went down with their in-person voting, and imagine if that happened in the California recall, which is going to largely vote by mail. So it wouldn't probably happen to that extent. That's one of the reasons, separate and apart from the pandemic, that they moved to vote by mail, was because these touch screens that supposedly mark your paper ballot for you were such a freaking disaster.
No, I'm with you. I said hand-marked paper ballot. That's what I want to see. I want us to return to some bit of that. Give me a piece of paper and a marker, and that's where we go. But Jennifer, I appreciate you taking some time for us. Lots of information, lots of stuff to digest there. But good stuff. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you. As always, it's my pleasure to be on your show.
Thanks so much. Appreciate the time. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Any faith in our electoral system? You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break. Right back. Stick around.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1919. That was the day that the Boston police went out on strike. The police in Boston had not had a raise for over 6 years. They worked long shifts, sometimes even more than 80 hours a week. The police force was predominantly Irish. Many had served as U.S. soldiers in World War I. Fed up with their working conditions, the police formed a union and joined the American Federation of Labor. Boston's police commissioner, Edwin U. Curtis, refused to recognize the police union and fired 19 police officers for their organizing efforts. In response, the new union voted overwhelmingly to support a walkout. More than 1,100 police officers voted to strike, with only 2 voting no. Across the country, newspapers made dire predictions about the collapse of law and order in Boston. While there was an upsurge in crime due to the lack of police on the streets, the press wildly exaggerated what was happening in the city. Newspapers ran stories about gangs running wild with rioters and communists attacking women, fueling Red Scare fears. The entire labor movement came under attack. Massachusetts Governor Calvin Coolidge declared, quote, "There is no right to strike against public safety by anyone, anywhere, anytime." This hard line against the striking police helped propel him to the national stage and eventually to the Oval Office. The striking policemen were fired and replaced with unemployed World War I veterans. In response to the national outcry over the strike, the American Federation of Labor revoked the charter for other police unions. The Boston police strike is the subject of the page-turner The Given Day by author Dennis Lehane. A fictionized account of the events surrounding the strike, the novel follows the experiences of one Irish policeman during this tumultuous time.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So some interesting news coming out of Alaska, and we're going to be taking a trip to Alaska in about a month. Our good friends at Teamsters Local 959 in Anchorage are going to bring us out to do a speech and meet the guys, and we're going to do a couple of programs from there. Looking forward to what I think is going to be an incredible opportunity to reach out to folks there in Alaska. Looking forward. But the EPA today has restored protections, or is in the process of restoring protections, to Alaska's Bristol Bay. Evidently, a Canadian company wanted to build a giant mine there. They're saying, no, probably a bad idea because of all the fish and all the wildlife that are dependent on that area. I think it's a good thing. Fortunately, we'll see if this actually gets stopped. But look, new administration, new president, new outlook, new future, hopeful future. And with this EPA, with folks back in charge, I have some hope again. And they've just evidently come out with ways that climate change are going to hit us, and especially going to hit poor and minority communities. And here to share some thoughts on this most recent piece on climate change by the folks at the EPA, I've asked Bill Hirzy to come talk with us. Bill is a past president of Local 2050 of the National Federation of Federal Employees. He's also an executive board person, and our good friend Gary Morton, president of AFGE Council 238. Guys, thanks for taking time for us.
Thank you, Rick. Always happy to support you because you've been a supporter of our movement and making sure we hold people accountable.
And it's something I appreciate you guys coming on and talking to me. Bill, let's start with you. I'm looking at this thing in Alaska going, I'm happy to see that there's an EPA out there actually protecting our environment for a change, instead of saying, no, go ahead, rape and pillage.
No, yeah, well, that's what we had. That's what we had in the previous 4 years. But hopefully, things are turned around for good this time. This report that you referred to, by the way, is a report of the Office of Air and Radiation. And if people want to go search for that at the Office of Air and Radiation website, it's called the Social Vulnerability Report. They could get access to all the data in that report by going to that site.
Yeah, it's I've looked at it. It's long. It's a lot,
What is that?
which is why that we've brought you guys, the experts, on to come and explain to us exactly what's in this. Because look, the reality is most of us don't have the ability to go read hundreds of pages of very dense scientific kind of language, which is why I defer to people who this was your career. So what are we looking at here? We know climate change is real. We're seeing the effects of these massive storms. Things are getting worse. What are they laying out for us?
Shall I take this, Gary?
Yes, you, sir. Yes, sir.
In reading this report, the people who did it set two different possible increases in average temperature of 2 degrees Celsius or 4 degrees Celsius. I'm going to revert now to using degrees Fahrenheit because that's what most folks, other than us science wonks, deal with is Fahrenheit degrees, which is about 4 degrees increase, 4 degrees on average Fahrenheit, and 8 degrees Fahrenheit at the higher level. And before getting into the individual effects on in people, to set the stage, the geographic effects speak very loudly from this report. At the lower so-called increase in temperature, large areas of the Southwest, the Great Plains from Canada down to Mexico, the Midwest and the Northeast, they're likely to see average temperatures actually 6 to 8 degrees higher, 6 to 8 degrees Fahrenheit higher as an average temperature. So that's the lowest thing, lowest energy, or the lowest temperature aspect of this report. And the people who lived in there are going to be suffering this. The effect on individuals, and the report points out, they looked at 4 different classifications of folks and to see what their relative risks are of having adverse effects.
Right.
Minorities, which includes Black and African American, Asian Americans, Alaskan and Aleutian Islands people, and Asian and Pacific Islands people, and and also low income folks and people who have less than a high school diploma. To zero in on this, the Black African American community is 40% higher risk of living in an area from which death is a plausible outcome. They're in the highest risk of extreme temperature and extreme adverse health effects. They're also at about a 34% increase to suffer childhood asthma in their kids. And
but Bill, that's not new. There's nothing new about that.
Yeah.
This has been, it's going on for decades. So let me go to you, Gary, because part of what I hope the EPA is doing is taking the information that Bill has laid out, and I think we understand this viscerally. The rich are positioning themselves that they're going to be okay. The poor are basically screwed and are going to be sacrificed so that the rich can have more. What's the EPA going to do to help move us in a direction that protects some of those most vulnerable folks, and those of us in the middle, not making us vulnerable?
Well, I hope, because the mission of the EPA is protect human health and the environment for all Americans. But let's be real that race, wealth, politics, all type of economic factors, education, poor whites, poor blacks, everyone is treated the same based on the economic disparities. And environmental justice program, which is not new. However, we hope during this administration it's more than talk, right, because the definition is environmental justice, fair treatment of all people, regardless of color, race, national origin, dealing with the development, implementation, enforcement of laws, regulations. The objective is to have the same degree of environmental protection and health and protection from the health hazards for every American. It's not happening. Politics get in the middle now of the ability of the EPA to do their job, and I want to turn it over back into scientific integrity. Until Congress enables the employees and the agency to actually do their job, it's just talk.
Right. And then that's why I come back to this report, Bill, because this report is kind of a basis of going, look, Houston, we have a problem. I forget who recently called, we're in the moment of code red for humanity. The United Nations called it, we're in a moment of code red for humanity. This report seems to bear that out, no?
Well, yeah, this report and also the sixth assessment report of the International Panel on Climate Change has just come out, and there are things like we're in a situation where the carbon dioxide levels are now higher than they've been in the last 2 million years. The ocean is heating up at the fastest rate in over 10,000 years, and in order to get this under control, we need our union brothers and sisters across the country, and especially the union brothers and sisters in West Virginia. I know they've got concerns about mining jobs, but hopefully we can get some pressure on the senator from West Virginia and Joe Manchin to buy into this big bill, the big infrastructure bill. It's currently at $3.5 trillion, but whatever comes out of that bill has got to have control of climate change as part of it. It absolutely has to have that in there, because without that, humanity is on a fast trail for bad news. And among these minorities, by the way, in the report, the most universal adverse effect you see is loss of labor hours because of increased temperatures. That's across the board. And Blacks, Hispanics, and others, the low-income folks, the largest impact on those people is loss of labor hours. Obviously, death and childhood asthma is a problem, but they all suffer loss of labor hours because of increased temperature. So this is something for all working people to get hold of, because that's a big deal.
No, it is a big deal. And this is where you go back to what Rex Tillerson said years ago, that, climate change is real, but we're going to adapt. We're going to have new technologies, going to do all this stuff. I never believed that argument that we were going to be able to adapt and come up with new gadgets and whatnots. And, maybe if they sell us air and charge us more for electricity, for air conditioning, maybe that's the future. And maybe that's the capitalist dream of where we're going. But I'm looking at this and I'm going, all of us are going to be affected adversely in this, and all of us are screwed. So, I looked at this report and I'm going, yeah, it's going to affect minority communities the hardest first. They're the canaries in the coal mine, but eventually it's going to come eat all of us, Gary. And this is one of those moments where you go, when the sinking ship, we can't be dividing ourselves up because we're all going down.
Yes. And climate change is a health issue, and that's why it affects everybody. No matter where you live, it's going to come. I use the analogy, at one time, the opium epidemic wasn't declared an epidemic until it hit certain areas, and then it's an epidemic. People have to call their congressman. Education in terms of just knowledge. Historically, the poor, Blacks, poor whites, undereducated have been forced into a zoned area of development, industrial corridors, freeways, dense population, until they look to repair those areas. And the problem is the economics. There's no economics involved in repairing those areas in terms of helping the people. So again, I've often said you can't do environmental protection based on economics. And it's a terrible balance, because you have health. And the agency that's invested and supposed to protect human health and the environment is going through hopefully a turn back. But I'm looking at the swiftness of the regulations from the last administration and the lack of swiftness from this administration to reverse
Right.
some critical areas.
No, this was something I wanted to get into because the administration has talked about some climate issues. They've talked about in this infrastructure plan addressing some of it. I don't think enough. I don't think quickly enough. In fact, President Biden, the administration has said by 2050 we're going to increase our solar capacity to some bit. I'm going, well, we should be doing that now.
Yes.
Is this administration moving fast enough in your estimation? And if not, where could they do better? And what suggestions would you have? Let's start with you, Bill. What could this administration do better?
Let me point out something going way back to the Clinton era when we had a National Partnership Council and all the labor unions at EPA, at the Afge units, the NTEU units, NAIL and engineers and scientists, all got together and put heat on administration to do things, including we wrote a letter to the administrator kicking him in the butt about taking action on climate change. We did that back in about 2002. So the unions can stand up again and come together and continue to put pressure on the administration when they work together like that from the inside, and you galvanized unions on the outside to put this kind of pressure in place. I think the pressure on the inside and the pressure on the outside can maybe have some effect. We found that to be the case in a number of issues. There's a EPA union history website that chronicles all of this stuff. And it's the workers inside EPA have more power than they think. I'm afraid they've kind of fallen away from that realization. But if they stand up on their hind legs like we used to do back in the early 2000s, we can make things happen.
Yeah, we got a lot of work to do. Gary, let me ask you, because at the end of this, I don't think anything gets done until we can figure out how to make it somewhat profitable for someone, or we can build an economy around it. Do you see a future in green energy in this country, given the fact that the oil interests and the gas interests have such a stranglehold on our political process?
Yeah, I look at it as maybe a rival league. Yes, there is room for green energy. But as long as we have the political influences, the economical influence, the lobbyists, senators and congressmen who will vote in terms of politics or economics versus health, protecting human health and the environment, the agency needs to be forced to do its job. Can't get caught up in political issues. Scientific integrity is a big problem. Fear of reprisals for speaking out. We just came from administration. They need to make the employees comfortable and also educate the public to demand environmental protection. Environmental protection is not waiting for something to happen. It's a deterrent so it doesn't happen.
Right. No, absolutely. You've got to be much more proactive. And look, one of the things the last administration did really well, and I'm not giving them credit, I'm just saying they did really well, is they neutered your ability to be proactive.
Yes.
And it's this administration's responsibility to pick that mantle up, to move forward, and to undo much of the damage of the last administration. But guys, I appreciate you taking a little time for me. This is really an important topic, and I'm sure something that I'll be reaching out to you again as this continues, because clearly from this report, this isn't going away.
No, I just want to say thank you, Rick, and we're available anytime, because at AFGE Council 238, we want to protect human health and the environment.
Good stuff, guys.
I'd urge people to go to epaunionhistory.org and see how we did it in the past. And as my dad, the longshoreman, used to say, the bosses don't give you anything. You have to stand up and fight for it.
There you go, Bill. Thanks so much. Gary, appreciate the time. Quick break, right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
Hello, I'm David Philman, Executive Director of AFSCME Council 13, the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees. A union of over 1.4 million strong and growing, AFSCME is gaining improvements in the workplace all across America. And right here in the Commonwealth, more than 95,000 AFSCME members make Pennsylvania happen. Highways, libraries, hospitals, parks, offices, prisons, classrooms, museums, courtrooms. You'll find AFSCME members at work in all these places and many more.
I make Pennsylvania happen every day.
I make Pennsylvania happen every day.
Today's AFSCME members take on public service jobs as diverse as they are, not for the recognition, but for a better Pennsylvania. For more information, please visit our website at AFSCME13.org. Labor is changing, so is your labor union. We are AFSCME. We make Pennsylvania happen!
Corporate acolytes and right-wing moralists constantly preach to laboring stiffs about the uplifting dignity of work. Of course, that's dignity as defined and controlled by corporate elites, not by workers, and the reward for it frequently includes on-the-job injuries and death. Not that CEOs and well-heeled investors intend to sicken, maim, and kill thousands of laborers every year, but they certainly do put them in positions that assure such unhappy results. For example, they demand that farm workers go sunrise to sunset picking crops in California's 105-degree desert heat, and that construction crews toil in the muggy dog days of Florida summers, tarring condo roofs. Low-paid, powerless workers die, but no one in the corporate hierarchy did the deed, right? Heat was the killer. But wait, not only are aloof, air-cool bosses the ones who knowingly subject subordinates to deadly heat, but they're also the ones who hire squads of lobbyists and lawyers to kill simple, inexpensive rules to stop these deaths. Such rules as requiring ample water at work sites, ensuring paid rest breaks in cool spaces, training on-site managers and employees to detect and react to signs of heat stress, and imposing serious punishments for violators. Such sensible steps have repeatedly been proposed as official workplace policy for at least the last 50 years. But intense industry lobbying has killed the adoption of all attempts to prevent what amounts to workplace murder by corporate profiteers. Instead, the U.S. government pretends to protect workers by printing posters admonishing employees to beware of heat, basically telling them goodbye and good luck. This is Jim Hightower saying, but at last a real proposal has been put on the table by more than 110 grassroots groups. See it and join it by contacting Public Citizen, citizen.org. The Hightower Radio Lowdown is made possible by you lowdowners who subscribe to our monthly newsletter, The Hightower Lowdown. You know who you are. Thank you.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So this is kind of cute. Supreme Court Justice Stephen Breyer, he said that the most recent ruling there in Texas upholding the abortion ban, or law, I mean, they're calling it a law. It's really a ban. He said it's very, very, very wrong. He said, I'll add one more very. Going, oh, that's helpful. Very helpful. Just add another very. He said, I wrote a dissent, and that's the way it works. Yeah, he seems to think that it's going to come back up, and he seems to think that there's going to be potentially a way to correct this. I don't share his optimism. I'm very not optimistic, but here to share some thoughts on maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm seeing this the wrong way. I've asked our good friend Sarah Burris to come talk with us. Sarah's a reporter over at RawStory, rawstory.com, their website. Sarah, he's very, very, very concerned it's wrong. He's going to add another very.
Well, bless his heart. If he's that concerned, maybe he should resign so that we can appoint somebody before he dies and before Republicans take over the damn Senate. Stupid.
Yeah.
Breyer.
That's not going to happen, though. Understand, these people, they don't think that way. They're going to live forever. It was one of my knocks against, as much as I liked RBG, she should have retired a couple of years before that.
You know, I mean, the only satisfaction I have is that maybe, just maybe, she's haunting Brett Kavanaugh somewhere in that building. Maybe. I don't know, but that would be nice.
She's spitting in his beer. Is that what you're telling me?
Probably not, but it'd be nice if she'd stick her little ghost foot out every time you walk by.
So let's talk about this, because, the sad reality is we're in this moment where right now, front and center, the reality is this is gonna be the law in Texas. We're gonna have people, bounty hunters, seeking out women and going through trash looking for who knows what. I mean, this is crazy.
I mean, are we gonna just are they gonna require us to send our our feminine hygiene products, our used feminine hygiene products, for them to inspect to see if there are any embryos inside? Like, is that where we're going with this? Because if Greg Abbott wants me to send him my Diva cups, sure, why not? Why the hell not?
And maybe that's the future. Maybe just every woman in the country send it to him.
There have been some movements. There have actually been some movements in the past with women sending their stuff to lawmakers. Well, most women send the coat hanger, but I personally have an affinity for used feminine hygiene products to your local Republican. This is really disturbing, and it's infuriating on so many levels. It's infuriating because the law is wrong. It's unconstitutional. It's weird. It's lazy. It's Republicans who couldn't come up with their own anti-Roe law by themselves that would pass muster. But the big part of it is the unbelievable number of men who don't understand how our bodies work. And we are more than half of the population here. That's the thing, is there are more of us than there are of you penis people. And you would think that there would be some interest.
So why don't you rule the world? I mean, there are more of you. How come you can't all get on the same page?
Well, some of us are scrapbooking, I made that joke for your wife.
Yeah. She's not hearing it.
But no, I think, a lot of women aren't running the world because they're too busy trying to save their own individual world. I mean, we got a lot of responsibilities. We basically run the house. We take care of everybody's kids. Half of us take care of our neighborhood, our parents. And now you want us to fix the country too. It's just God, that's a lot of stuff. I don't even have time to dust, right? It's a lot.
But you asked for it. I mean, this is one of those things. Women want it all. There you go. We've given it to you. You're now.
Yeah.
Here you go. It's all you. Because I'll be honest with you. I want women to run the country. I'm ready for that. I'm ready for women to run things and to show us the right way. I'm ready for it.
I think it would definitely be a heck of a lot better. My hope is that because this law is so messed up, and Republicans have gone just so far off the reservation, they've gone around the bend, they've lost all the fries in the Happy Meal. My hope is that people are enraged enough in Texas that they are going to do something about it. Things are close in Texas. There's a lot of movement that Democrats could have in that state. And you've got people who are freezing to death. Now you got people who are dying of COVID, and now they want to go after women. So, clearly Republicans are not doing that great of a job in the great state of Texas.
But here's the weird thing. I would think that, and this is where, being an observer in this, that, a lot of people I know, there's a lot of energy here, and I'm hoping that this is energizing the Democratic base to get out and vote, especially as we come into next week's California recall, because even if you live in California, what's going on in Texas does affect you, because, well, the Supreme Court's going to make that the law of the land, and other states are going to do this as well. So it does. So I would think, and maybe I'm wrong here, but wouldn't this be the boost that Newsom needs to not get recalled?
I definitely think that's probably one of the things. The other piece of it, I think, is the Delta variant. So many Republicans were furious with him because of all of his mandates and all of his lockdowns. And so they were going to recall him, and how dare he, and all of this stuff. And now it turns out a whole bunch of them are dead. So, I think folks are actually starting to learn, oh, gee, maybe Gavin Newsom wasn't all that wrong about a lot of things.
Yeah.
He has some stuff that he needs to fix, but I mean, a lot of this is not,
but
like
Larry
this whole
Elder?
thing of, yeah, I mean, like, that dude is nuts. I mean, even Republicans think that dude is nuts. So, I mean, he brandished a gun to his then fiance, and he's got serious issues. So I can't imagine. I mean, if you look at the polling, obviously things look a little bit against Elder.
Yeah.
But the thing that's so messed up in California is that you can have a majority of the population vote to recall Newsom and then elect this Yahoo with like 20%. So you can have an overwhelming majority of the state who don't want Larry Elder and still get him as your governor. And I mean, that's kind of messed up. Like, California's really got to get some stuff fixed here. Y'all ended up with Arnold Schwarzenegger at one point. So you think that they would have fixed that the last time?
Yeah.
So yeah, you gotta fix that stuff.
No, it's going to be interesting to see where this goes. But, I'm hoping that, I've had some Democratic strategist friends say, this is the biggest mistake Republicans have made. It's going to galvanize the Democratic base. There's going to be all this mobilization. There's going to be all this stuff because there are marches coming up, and that's great. We need the women's marches. We need to get that out. We need to get that moving, especially into next year. But I've also got some friends going, yeah, you're going to wear yourself out now, and next year it's going to be forgotten because the average person in this country's got the attention span of a gnat.
That is true. And see, I'm all about marches. Marches are great. I would much prefer, instead of a march, we all just sort of get together and hug it out. And instead of marching, I would prefer everybody run for office. All of these women all over the country who are marching, they need to run for school board. You need to run for city councils. You need to run for county assessor. You need to run for every single office up and down the ballot. And you need to fight for these offices. Republicans have been doing this for a long, long time, and this is how they get started. This is how really messed up laws get on the books at really low levels of government, from people who, just basically take a document from some think tank and pass it as a law. So, I mean, I'm all for the marching, but if you want to do something that matters, that really will make a difference, you need to run for office.
No, we need more Katie Porters in the world, man. And I love what she did for the Joe Manchin today.
Yes, and see, that is another thing that's really important. We talk about stuff like, these people who claim that they're pro-life all the time, but then when it comes down to it, they don't support paid family leave. They don't support childcare. There's a ridiculously high infant mortality rate. Nobody cares so much in Texas about vaccinations and wearing masks. So, we have all of these things that could help make the country a better place. And Joe Manchin has decided that he's going to stand in the way of it. And Katie Porter's not having it. Like, she's ready to stand in the way of that and say, no, actually, here's what's, I'm going to get my whiteboard out and I'm going to outline why you're, a jackass. And the thing with Manchin is he's now complaining, the debt is just so high, it's so much, and now Biden wants to take care of children and families. How dare he? And so this idea that somehow we're going to spend all this money and not get, any kind of revenue coming in is what Katie Porter is saying. That's not the way it works. He's already agreed to a slight increase in the corporate tax rate. There are a heck of a lot of corporations who don't even pay their taxes at all.
Right.
There's a whole group of people. I'm not even talking about raising taxes. I'm talking about people who won't even pay their taxes now.
Yeah.
There are so many companies, so many rich people, so many who just refuse to pay their taxes. And they have these lawyers who can instead fight off the government. And so the government won't even go after them because they don't have the power to. They don't have enough staff and the research. And so, I mean, if honest to God, if Joe Manchin cares about, taking down the deficit, then he should be supporting the IRS going after some of these people, because we could be paying off the deficit right now.
Absolutely. In fact, the Treasury Department just yesterday came out with a report that I'm sure you've seen that said, we've got our rich people, our 1%ers who are underpaying this tax gap. It's a nice way of saying tax cheats, but the tax gap, the gap between what we're expecting and what we're actually paid is about over $600 billion a year, or they've estimated somewhere in the neighborhood of $7 trillion in a decade. Well, gee, this infrastructure plan's half of that. So if we just went after half of that, it would pay for itself, don't you think?
Yeah, that's the thing with all of these crazy Republicans and people like Joe Manchin, who complain so much about the deficit, but when it comes down to actually collecting taxes to pay it off, they don't want to do it. They want to do it on the backs of the poor, on the backs of children, childcare, seniors, all of those people who desperately need and deserve to have a country that works for them. And instead, they're standing in the way of this. And I mean, Joe Manchin's state in particular, there's a really great website I tweeted out earlier. I actually pinned the tweet to my Twitter account. And I went through all of these things that West Virginia would benefit from on this budget. Like, we're talking about a ton of jobs in a state where people are really struggling. You're talking about job training programs, improving their power grid, like so much of this stuff. And, instead of taxing the people of West Virginia more, just take some of the federal money that we're offering you, just tell your senator, hey, we would like all of this free money that Joe Biden would like to give us. How is that not a completely easy decision to make?
It really is. But, it's somebody else those people might get something. And it's crazy. I've said from the beginning, Joe Manchin could be the most powerful person in the country. He could hold the country hostage and make West Virginia one of the top 10 states in the country just by give me everything I want, or I'm going to hold you. And maybe he's doing that. Maybe we're all, being duped by the mastery that is, or the wizardry that is Joe Manchin. But I don't think so. This is one of those, I would actually give him credit if this is what he was doing, but I'm not seeing it.
God, wouldn't it be awesome? Because of anybody, like West Virginia has really been royally screwed. The whole coal industry has completely destroyed the state. Taken so much of their natural resources, left people penniless. The opioid crisis has decimated towns and families all over the state. If anybody really deserves somebody stepping in and saying, here, have this free money, go buy yourself a new microwave or a new fridge or a new car or something. It's West Virginia. And it would be so great if that's what he did. If he was just like, no, I want more for my people. Instead, he's fighting for these corporations that are basically getting him elected, that are giving him millions and millions of dollars. And I went through, all of his campaign donations. Interestingly, his largest campaign donation came from the West Virginia Democratic Party. They've given him $100,000 over the course of the last 5 years or something. And I'm sure, that comes in different forms, but, the rest of all of his money is coming from Wall Street, from oil, from a lobbying firm, some weird lobbying firm that doesn't even operate in his state. None of these companies are giving him money to do this. And so I don't understand. And some of these companies too would actually benefit from the money that the budget would come in, like this lobbying firm. Don't you know that so many of their clients are going to be getting money to do projects, which means that they're going to be getting extra money to fight for the contracts for these projects. So you would think that they would be giving Manchin money to support that, and it's just not.
I don't get the rationale behind it. Because we need the investment, the reverberation effect of the investment money. If you buy the conservative ideology that, you have all this activity that generates more, the compounding and all this stuff, it would actually bring some money back in. And oh, by the way, if we had rich people paying their taxes, we probably wouldn't be in the mess that we're in overall. You listen to the Rick Smith Show here with Sarah Burris, reporter over at RawStory. I want to get to a couple of your other stories real quick, Sarah, because a couple of them, all of them are fabulous, and I hope people consume them often. But my favorite here in Pennsylvania is the pizza woman who wrote the 114-page typo-laden manifesto that I just, if you've got enough time to sit down and write a 114-page manifesto, get a job, do something. There's something wrong here.
She had a very hard time with this document. It seems, this was a legal court document that she filed to the court, arguing why she is a sovereign citizen and thus cannot be charged or prosecuted for anything that she did on January 6th.
Yeah, cool.
And my favorite part, I didn't read all of it. I scanned a little bit, and then it was a lot, and I was just like scrolling through. My favorite part is that she quoted the Magna Charta.
Not the Magna Carta. It was an honest mistake.
Not the Magna Carta. But I feel like if you're filing something in court, maybe you should at least spell check. Just run a spell check. And I'm as guilty as anybody for my typos. Like, my typos are wretched, right? And I never have been able to spell anything. But at the very least, I know that it's the Magna Carta, not the Magna Charta. But my favorite part of this whole argument with her is that she's claiming sovereign citizenship. She's claiming that she is her own entity, her own vessel is what she calls herself. And thus she is not governable by the United States of America. But when I looked her up on the voter file, she's registered to vote as a Republican in the state of Pennsylvania and voted in the presidential election. So clearly she does recognize the United States government and the government of the state of Pennsylvania. So it's just like, which one is it?
Yeah. And I would imagine, she pays probably taxes because she,
probably
owns a business, a pizza shop. And I would love to see I'd love to see the pizza shop. Does she pay taxes? This could open up a whole nother, kind of, bit of questioning. If you're not if you are this quote unquote sovereign citizen, what are you getting all of the fire protection and all of the stuff that comes with being a citizen? Crazy.
If you don't acknowledge the United States government, then why are you voting for a president?
There you
go.
go.
I would love to be the prosecutor in that case. That would be so much fun. If for no other reason to say, I'm sorry, did you say Magna Charta?
But here's the thing, and this is where living in Pennsylvania is fun, because we've had a bunch of Pennsylvania folks show up at the Capitol during the insurrection, doing a lot of crazy things. And I'm always amazed that when it comes time to go in front of the court. And look, on a certain level, I give her credit. She's sticking to her guns. She's got her 114 pages of typos and verbal diarrhea on the page there. Good for her. She's sticking with it. I actually respect that a little bit. It's like the guy in Florida who, his last dying breath was, COVID's a hoax. Good. Don't turn back now. Take it right with you. I actually, on a certain level, respect that. It's those people who wrote these manifestos who then go into court all teary-eyed. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
I didn't mean it. I got a problem with that. Stick with it. Hold your guns.
Yeah, at the very least. They're the shaman made a deal this week.
Yeah.
The QAnon shaman. There were a couple of people who went before the court and made deals for misdemeanors for lowered charges. These are not people who helped plan the event. One of the guys who did actually pay for 200 people, I think it was, to send 200 people to Washington. That guy's going away for quite a bit. So, I mean, there are some of the big charges that have come down, but most of these are the lower level people. It's going to be interesting when we start talking about the militia members and the white supremacists and the neo-Nazis and the people who they're having a protest for on September 18th to protest the fact that they've been, socked away in jail or are being charged for their participation on the 6th. Those are the people that I think those are the ones where I think folks are going to try and start making some deals. I don't know if they'll be able to, though. You know, like you've got some of these guys who are just like, I was taken in by Donald Trump. It was like a cult. And they really, the way they describe it, it really does sort of sound like this cult.
Oh, it is.
And it absolutely is.
They bought the flag, man. They bought the flag. I know these people. They've got the flag in their truck. They bought the T-shirt. They got the hat. There might be something in the hat that bleeds into the brain that we don't know about. So instead of the tinfoil to keep things out, this stuff keeps it in. Who knows? I mean, listen to these people selling all these different, miracle cures and all the snake oil that's coming out of the right wing from dietary supplements to beet juice to, Peter pills. I mean, there's all kinds of craziness in the right wing keeps shoving down these people's gullets. You never know what's going on.
And it's so sad because now you've got all these people who are, showing up in hospitals or calling poison control because they're taking the horse drug that's taking them. Yeah.
Take 2. They're small.
That's the thing. It's so hard because you're like, why are we fighting so hard to save these people? At some point you just gotta be like, let me introduce you to Darwin's shelf, right? I mean, it's just.
Yeah. No, I sit here and I go, look, I know it's bad for my soul. I know it's bad for my soul.
Yeah.
It's bad for my soul to go, you know what? I don't care. I mean, and I hate thinking that way, but there's a point at which you go, I don't care.
I'm just tired. I am so tired of fighting. I am so tired of pleading with people to save their own lives. And it's just exhausting. And I don't know how, I mean, I keep thinking how exhausted I am. Imagine how all the doctors and nurses are who are dealing with this crap and have been for over a year.
I can't even imagine. And look, I give them credit. They are much better people than I will ever be. I don't know how you get up every day and you deal with the kind of things that they have to see. And at the beginning, I read this, a listener sent me this, I'm not going to call it a poem, but this story of, the person who goes and cleans up after you're dead. Their job is to, take all the stuff off you because someone's got to do it. Clean the room up while you're there. And this was, it was heart wrenching. I mean, I'm not an overly emotional person, but it's one of those things that makes you go, this is bad. I don't know how those people get up and do it every day.
I know. I just spent the last year and a half, I held 3 people as they died. And I lost count of how many people that I knew that I lost. And honestly, the people that died, it wasn't even from COVID. It was, my best friend's mom who died of cancer. Pops died, after a long battle with Alzheimer's. My other grandfather, God love him, he was 90 billion years old and fell and hit his head and slipped into a coma and died. And all of these people, dying is not a beautiful thing. It is hard, and there's a smell and a way that things look and how your loved one appears and the way that their mouth falls open whenever they take their last breath and what that sounds like. And it is hard. And you are doing that to your family.
Yeah.
And to all of these people who don't even know you.
No, that's what, like I said, I hope I'm walking down the street one day, just right over. Quick, easy, painless, take me out with the trash, be done, move right along. Next, told my wife, bring a boyfriend to the funeral. Do what you got to do. But don't have a funeral because I don't want anybody to show up to make sure. So there is that as well. But no, I mean, it's horrible. And I make light of this, but it is horrible. what these people have to go through. And I fear what happens on the other side of this as people just leave the profession and we end up in a place where there's nobody left to care for us. But it is what it is. But Sarah, I appreciate the time, the work that you guys do. Fabulous stuff as always. Love having you here. Can't wait to see you back here next time.
Thank you. Have a good weekend.
You as well. Our good friend Sarah Burris. Make sure you check out the work she does over at RawStory. RawStory.com, the website. Quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You listen to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
Saving work in America, one show at a time. The Rick Smith Show.
Climate change poses an existential threat to our lives, to our economy, and the threat is here. We can stop it from getting worse.
Biden pushes for infrastructure resilience following Ida's devastation. Toxic chemicals and sewage left swirling in hurricane's wake. Plus,
the last gallon of leaded gasoline was sold in Algeria in July.
A new milestone. The world finally got the lead out.
All of those milestones and mayhem straight ahead. From BradBlog.com, I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
I think we're at one of those inflection points where we either act or we're going to be in real trouble.
Oh, we're in trouble. This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, it's good to be back. Luckily, there were no big green stories over the past week, but I've got this today from the League of Conservation Voters, who have now told every Democrat in Congress that if they do not support federal climate action in Joe Biden's Build Back Better bill, their action fund will not endorse any of those Democrats.
Good. Putting their money where their mouth is.
Yes, ma'am. What did you got for us today?
Well, we are in peak hurricane season right now.
Great.
And Tropical Storm Mindy quickly formed on Wednesday and hit Florida's panhandle just hours later. Climate scientists have observed a trend toward faster intensification of storms due to warming oceans, and that gives communities no time to prepare. Mindy is the 13th named storm of the 2021 season. The average date for the 13th named storm used to be October 25th.
Wow. And really, this storm did just spin out of nowhere and boom, made landfall.
Yep. And in the wake of last week's Category 4 Hurricane Ida, as we go to air, the death toll has jumped to at least 82 across 4 states. If there is any good news from Ida, it is that New Orleans levees, pumps, and storm surge floodgates mostly held, but the state's electric grid did not, with Ida knocking down more transmission lines than Hurricane Katrina, Ike, Delta, and Zeta combined. The lights are finally back on in New Orleans, but areas outside the city are still without power. Ida's destruction forced the shutdown of 51 municipal drinking water systems, and more than 300,000 people are still without access to clean water.
Well, you know what wouldn't hurt? Burying those power lines. I understand there's a bill working its way through Congress which might be able to help pay for important stuff like that.
New reports are now emerging of extensive water and air pollution caused by Ida, which passed directly over one of the nation's primary oil and gas industry hubs in Louisiana. Before and after the storm, oil and gas facilities vented dangerous chemicals and gases into the atmosphere. The U.S. Coast Guard is now investigating nearly 2,000 reports of oil and chemical spills, including an 11-mile-long oil spill from an abandoned well. A recent GAO report found that the oil and gas industry has abandoned more than 18,000 miles of decommissioned pipelines in the Gulf of Mexico alone that continue to pose a pollution threat.
Wow. create the problem and then abandon it.
President Joe Biden this week visited victims of Ida's destruction in Louisiana, Pennsylvania, New York, and New Jersey, where the storm and its remnants unleashed historic rainfall and deadly flash floods that demolished infrastructure and caused billions of dollars in damages. On Tuesday, Biden unequivocally drew the connection between man-made climate change and this summer's extreme weather disasters that have affected nearly 1 in 3 Americans. He bluntly stated that U.S. infrastructure is clearly not ready for accelerating climate change impact and urged Congress to pass his Build Back Better infrastructure jobs plan.
When I talk about building back better, I mean you can't build to what it was before this last storm. You got to build better so if the storm occurred again, there would be no damage. And so, folks, we got to listen to the scientists and the economists and the national security experts. They all tell us this is code red.
A new analysis this week by the Department of Energy finds that if Congress passes Biden's clean energy policies, doubling of U.S. solar energy projects could provide at least 40% of the nation's electricity by 2035 and employ as many as 1.5 million people, all without increasing electricity prices.
Or increasing emissions.
True. Congressional Democrats are now trying to hammer out the details of that massive budget reconciliation bill, including those crucial climate policies that the League of Conservation Voters has demanded in order to create millions of jobs, hardening the nation's infrastructure resilience. And finally, the world has finally stopped using toxic leaded gasoline, a century after it was developed and 50 years after its dangers were established. Leaded gasoline was phased out due to its high toxicity and links to lower IQs and higher rates of violent crime. The global phase-out of leaded fuel has prevented more than 1.5 million premature deaths and saved nearly $3 trillion per year from improved health and lower crime rates.
Yeah, but we still sold it until 2021. For much more on all of these stories and the ones we couldn't get to today, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your Green News Report.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
Well, it looks like Donald Trump has weighed in on what's going on in Wyoming, as evidently he's going to support the attorney who's running against Liz Cheney in the Republican primary. Her name, Harriet Hagman. Evidently, this is where he's going to go. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out in Wyoming. Whether the Cheney name still carries anything after she turned on the party and turned on the Donald, or if his hand picked. This will be one of those litmus test things. I'm surprised he jumped in the middle of that, to be honest. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on this and the other top stories of the day, I've asked our good friend, former Ohio Congressman and political analyst Bob Ney to come talk with us. Bob, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, thank you, Rick.
So it's being reported that he's got his horse. He's going to be backing this Harriet Hagman.
Right. Now, they're saying that he chose Hagman because she was the most impressive, to him. I think he chose her because he can't stand, he hates Liz Cheney and her dad. So,
right.
I think that's the reason. I don't think it's because, I'm so impressed. I was wavering between the two, and I thought he'd get into this to do anything. You're also going to see a ton of money, but I will note she's raising a ton of money.
Yeah. There's some people who believe that, her and Kinzinger and Romney are going to be the future of the Republican Party. And I'm going, I don't know what delusional island you live on, but I don't think they have the kind of clout that you're going to need to take over the Republican Party. Let me ask you this. It just popped into my head. You were a Republican for all of your political career.
Correct.
Mm-hmm. When did the party of Lincoln be okay with Robert E. Lee?
Well, I'll tell you, and this is just in my opinion of the 11 years that I spent there, I saw few cases where this was moved to any level when I was there, and in behind-the-scenes talk, or anything. I mean, you'd hear comments here and there from people, but Rick, I can say that there was, it went towards the Christian coalition, but it didn't go towards, white supremacists, et cetera, and that whole deal. It just kept going in a right direction. But I think that was avant-garde with the beginning of Trump.
See, now I've always thought that there was always a vein in the Republican Party that was always, the Southern conservatives, the Confederate, that vein going through the Republican Party. I've always believed that was there. But this thing with Trump now, rewriting history. Did you ever learn that Abe Lincoln was in negotiations to get Robert E. Lee to come be a general for the North? Did you see that anywhere?
No.
Because I'm looking at this letter that he put out, this statement, and I'm going, except for Gettysburg, he was the greatest strategist in the history of the world.
No, I mean what Lincoln did with the Confederacy, which was, I think, a smart move, was when the war ended, Lincoln decided to not hang everybody,
right.
Because people were saying, hang them all, go get them, except for Andersonville. Those people were so bad they had to do something with them. But, Lincoln didn't do that, and I don't think Lincoln was making deals to offer Lee, et cetera, certain positions. I don't think Grant would have liked that either.
Yeah, no, but it's amazing that how we rewrite history, and that just popped into my head because I've gotten into this world where years past, and look, you go back 10, 15 years, I used to have, some conservative friends who, I respected. They had their positions, I had mine. We would argue, we would debate, we would discuss all of that, and they came from a place of, they were consistent. It was their belief. Now it seems like no matter what we need to win an argument, we're going to be on any side of any issue just to get there, even if it means that the guy who, Abraham Lincoln, the guy who fought to end slavery, and the guy who fought to keep slavery inculcated in law, somehow they were negotiating to swap around. Just seems really twisted to me.
Well, I think it's very twisted, and I don't think it has any credibility. Out there, Lincoln wasn't, making deals to, humor the Confederacy. This was a civil war.
Yeah. No,
but and again, at the end, he became mild. Quote, in some people's opinion, he was just too mild because he didn't. People were calling for the execution of the people in the Confederacy.
It's where they did it's where they do everywhere else.
Right.
But we didn't. And maybe that's the problem. I mean, I remember a couple years ago, and this is way off where I wanted to go, but I was down in Richmond, Virginia, that monument that they just took down to Robert E. Lee. I remember looking at that going, what in the flying flippin' what is that doing here? Why is it that you have this giant monument to treason? Why is this guy here? And finally they've taken it down. But if you went through any of those southern areas, there were tons. The areas were littered with old Confederate generals, where they didn't really do that in the North with the Northern generals.
Right. I mean, there was a certain amount still of lingering. I don't know if you want to call it pride, and I'm not going to say that all the Southerners like Lee because the current Southerners like Lee because they wanted to continue slavery. There was just this thing about their quote generals, for the new country. Because we were split in half. There was a second country, the United States of the South.
No, you're right. So you're going to stick with the heritage argument, because I get people saying, no, the Confederate flag isn't inherently racist. It's our heritage flag.
Well, no, I think it stood for it stood for people who wanted to form a country to have slavery. So I think it's racist. I'm just saying some of the people, Southerners, I don't think that they to this day say, well, Lee should stay up there because I wanted slavery. It's just something they were raised with about their general. Because I've often wondered how you have statues to people that tried to divide the country.
I'm right there with you. Let's move on. Interesting story coming out of Afghanistan, and we're going to get a lot of this stuff every day because it's all about tearing Biden down. But evidently the Taliban is creating an all-male government, and the women ain't having it.
Well, right, and I listened to one of the tapes, which was very interesting, and they were actually saying Margbar Taliban, which in Dari means, death to the Taliban, and I heard it on the tape, and they were going down the street, and the crowd got bigger and bigger, and they were yelling, I want my freedom, and I thought it was very fascinating because, a lot of people are obviously fearful for good reasons of the Taliban, but it seems that the women's movement is just standing there saying, you're not going to do this to us. So they've got an all-male government, and the Taliban doesn't change its stripes. However, this is very interesting. This didn't happen last time 20-some years ago. So it's going to be fascinating to see, how the Taliban handles this. Hopefully, I'm not saying they change, but hopefully the women's attitude will allow them to continue to learn to read and things that were illegal last time when the Taliban ruled.
Yeah, because when I'm looking at this, I'm going, this is kind of what we wanted to have happen, isn't it?
Well, yes, and like I said, if there's a bright side to being there 20 years longer than we should have, if we want to find some bright side, women were allowed to have a lot of freedom again, because they had freedom years before. If you look at pictures of the 60s, they were in college. They didn't have the burqas on. There was that period when the Taliban came in that changed all of that.
Right.
And then the 20 years after the Taliban were put down, then it went back to basically, what they, for the most part, what they had before. Although, all the money we spent, a lot went into contractors' hands instead of into programs that could have really, really helped people a lot more, including women. But again, if there's any bright spot, maybe this, since that the women are not going to say, or they're not going to let themselves go backwards at the hands of the Taliban. We'll have to see.
No, and I saw this and I go, this is a good thing. We'll see how it plays out. Wanted to bring it back here. The speech today. Did you happen to see the president's speech?
Yes, and the first thought I had, he was strong. Obviously, he was pointed. He, was going in a direction where some people didn't think he would go. But I think that the president and the people around him know that one of the reasons that he was elected is to do something about the virus versus what was happening in America. Of course, they did start, the Trump administration started vaccines and stuff, but again, a little late, obviously. So I think that the president came out and he did something psychologically that is very honest in what he did, Rick. He acknowledged that there's anger out there. He didn't just say you're not getting vaccinated and how bad you are. He did say you're part of the problem, but he acknowledged that there's an anger, and he acknowledged that there's an anger about Americans who have been vaccinated towards the people that have not gotten vaccinated. He acknowledged that because it is out there, and I thought that was in particular good. And also, he's pursuing the business end of this thing. And I also found with interest the Business Roundtable, which I'll call the more big CEOs and conservatives, didn't argue with this.
Nope.
Now,
I said from the beginning, I said capitalism will solve this.
That's it, right? Exactly. Because, if you have 100 or more employees, then there's a requirement, or you have to provide the testing to be done, which can be cumbersome, et cetera. So it's going to be easier. And the penalty is quite large. What was it, $14,000 per incident, I think?
Yeah, it's big. And if you got a lot of employees, that's a lot of money. But it takes me back to something, a conservative friend of mine said on election night 2016, when he said it's going to be interesting watching liberals turn into states' rights people. These next couple of weeks and months, it's going to be interesting for me to watch a lot of the pro-corporate conservatives that I've known over the years start trashing capitalism and corporate America, because look, corporate America is going to do what they got to do to continue to make money and not get sued for getting their employees sick. So we're going to see how this plays out.
Well, and you're going to have some holdouts because, again, you had the CEO, his name's Bolton, and that's the big group of the business roundtable, and he said, okay, we welcome what the president's doing. That's what he said. But then you go towards the CEO, his name's Hamer, I think, of the Texas Association of Business, and he says, this is frightening. This is regulation on business. Isn't it kind of interesting that nationally the big CEOs are like, okay, all right, we're going to live with this. We're going to work with it. It helps the cause. But then you go to Texas, and I'll bet you if you go to Florida, wherever you go into certain states, you're going to hear the counterparts of the Business Roundtable say, oh, no, this is an infringement. Now, there's going to be lawsuits, et cetera, but this will still be the working, it's an executive order. It'll be the working process until court suits do whatever. I'm also waiting for the day if a business doesn't do this of an employee who catches COVID suing the business.
This is exactly some of the conversations I've been having with some of my union leader friends who are going, look, we've got a handful of people who won't get vaccinated, and the rest of the people are, and we've got to find out where we represent people, and ultimately it's going to come down to if the employers can't keep the people who are vaccinated safe through testing or segregation or however they're going to have to do it.
Right.
There are going to be repercussions, and it's going to come in the form of grievances and arbitration and potentially lawsuits. And this is where I come back to it. Capitalism will figure this out. If our government is unable and unwilling, then capitalism will figure it out. Now, I was happy to see Biden come out and take a strong stand. We're going to get all medical people vaccinated. About damn time. If you're working in a hospital and you're not vaccinated, out the door. It doesn't make any sense to have you in a place where we're bringing the virus into. That makes no sense to me.
Well, Rick, our nursing homes in Ohio and your state and other states, and I'm just thinking of my home state, and those nursing homes were just, people were just dropping, dying. And when the vaccinations came out, Governor DeWine offered first, the first responders and the healthcare providers, the nursing home staff. And I think, 40% took the shot? 40? That was ridiculous.
Yeah, but you know what I find interesting, Bob, and maybe you've got some insight into this, but I've talked to labor leaders across the country who represent every level of nurse and your care aide and dietitian and everybody who works in a hospital. And what anecdotally it appears, now I haven't seen any studies on this. This is just my talking with people across the country, that the higher the educational level, and I hate putting it this way, but the doctors are much more vaccinated than the RNs, who are much more vaccinated at a higher rate than the LPNs, who are higher vaccinated rates than the people who work in housekeeping and dietitian and transport and the further down the educational ladder you get, the more resistance there is. And I'm going, this is a major problem here, because it seems to me that the people who don't know are the ones who are making the biggest stink.
Right. I don't know how it breaks down. For example, minorities at one point in time were way low. Now it's picked up. The vaccination rate has picked up. And I think it's, through conversations. I think it's person to person, too. Right. And in a hospital setting, I know I have some relatives that work in hospitals, and in the hospital setting at one time, amongst a certain group in a hospital, I must admit, it was just a laissez-faire, well, I don't think I'm going to get the shot, but the doctor has to have the shot because they're, constantly seeing people. Well, so are other people in the medical profession.
Yeah.
So there's something... I think eventually had to click, and if it doesn't click in the medical facilities, they're going to have to make it click. One hospital in Wheeling, West Virginia, across the river, they said everybody's got to have it, and if you don't have it, you can go. And that's the other thing. When it comes to suits, it's been ruled already a long time ago when the vaccine came out that it's not discriminatory to require people to have it. That was an important ruling.
Yeah. I'm going to be observant of what happens over these next couple of weeks, because you got the conservatives have come out right now and said, this is basically legalizing murder and all kinds of heated rhetoric. At some point, you've got to protect people from other people.
Well, here's the thing I think, too, with the president. Here's what bottom line. Is this going to cause controversy? You bet.
Yeah.
There's no doubt. Did the president promise to tackle this virus? He did. If he did nothing for a couple more months and this escalated, then he would be in severe trouble, I think. But on top of it, there's going to be some anger here and there, and there's going to be some relief here and there. But if this is successful and more people get vaccinated and this starts to get under control, he will come out of this at the end of the day fine. He will come out of this.
Yep, right around the
people
spring
that
next
had
year.
anger, they might have got a vaccination. They had a loved one that got COVID and they didn't get the vaccination, and there's going to be a lot of cases like that.
Yep, and
especially
right
with
around
the
next
Delta.
spring, his approval rating will go up when things turn around.
When it calms down and the job market, et cetera, follows through. Right.
Yeah, it's the whole strategy that goes into it. Last question I got for you. There's a new poll out, and I don't spend a lot of time on no labels, this no labels group, but they're pimping the idea that 6 in 10 Americans are in favor of Joe Manchin's strategic pause on the infrastructure plan. Am I getting that right?
Yes, they are saying that 6 of 10 are for a pause. Now, the thing is, though, in any of these polls, I think if Manchin just came out and said, wait a minute, let's take a pause, and that means take a look at it, see what we're doing, that people say, yeah, it's okay to, take a pause. Now, if you tell people, well, your Social Security dental plan is gone and your eye plan's gone and your child getting supported, while you're working is gone, now that might make a different poll result.
Yeah.
But I think just, the fact that Manchin came out very clever. I mean, think about it, Rick. He came out and said, let's just take a pause. And what's a pause? It's not a stop.
Yeah.
It's just a pause.
But we both know a strategic pause means you're putting a knife in its back.
Yeah, it's just like if anybody ever tells you that it's a temporary tax increase, please, it's not. And if it's a pause, it's temporary, it can maybe not be. Correct.
Yeah, or when your buddy tells you, his wife says, "Hey, I need a temporary separation." It's never
let's take
temporary.
a break. That'll be a long one.
It's a long one. You're right on. But Bob, I appreciate the time and
thank you, Rick.
Good stuff as always.
Thank you.
No, I'm serious. If someone comes to you and say we need to take a temporary pause, I worry, because as I said from the beginning of this, and my great fear is that if we take this strategic pause that Manchin wants us to have, the deadline to pass the bipartisan bill comes up rather quickly. And then it comes down to, do they pass that bipartisan bill? Do you get enough Democrats in the House to say, yeah, I trust you in the Senate to actually, negotiate in good faith to get, something beyond just the hard infrastructure, some of the social safety net stuff we need, some of the human infrastructure stuff that we need, the education for kids to go on to community college, the stuff for Granny to get new chompers and maybe some goggles, the long-term care that's coming into the infrastructural changes to take care of the next generation, the pre-K, all the stuff that's in here that we should have been doing for decades before. Are they going to roll the dice and go, yeah, we trust Mr. Strategic Pause, and Senator Dipsy Doo from Arizona, who thumbs down the minimum wage increase? Do we really trust them? And as I said from the beginning, I sadly fear we get nothing. Now, I've had tons of people come on the show and say, no, Rick, you're wrong. We're getting both. And I hope I'm wrong. I hope I am. I've been saying that from the beginning. Hope I'm wrong. I want to be wrong. Please make me wrong, because the country needs the investment. We need the jobs. We need to address so many problems that have been left to fester for decades. And you wonder why people are angry. And I understand the anger. Truly, I do. I get it. Because I'm angry too. But overwhelming what people want And to highlight what Bob said, look, the reality is you change that poll around to go, no, it's not a pause. It means the potential of we're going to kill these different things that are very popular, because the Build Back Better plan, whether you like it or not, is popular. Whether you like the rhetoric, whether you like the guy behind it, whether you like the fact that, Democrats are pushing it, popular. People want it. People need it. They understand. We need investment in this country in the worst way. And finally, there's a president who's focusing us in that direction. The last guy could have done it. I was all in favor. When the former guy said, hey, we're going to talk $1 trillion, $2 trillion, I'm going, yeah, we need it. We need double that. Absolutely. How do we get it? I'd have been lobbying for him. I'd have given them the big win, because it means that the country wins. But sadly, we're not there. Not there at all. One way or another, we're going to have to figure it out. If you missed any of today's program, thericksmithshow.com. That's where you go to get the podcast. The Rick Smith Show app on the smartphone. Take the program on the go wherever you go. And as always, you can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Make sure you follow us on social media, on Twitter, @RickSmithShow, Facebook, YouTube, all of that. When you're on the YouTube page, throw us a like, share some stuff. Let us know what you think. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to